Welcome to the University of Badassery podcast, where what we teach is to be a badass, you have to kick ass. And the first ass you need to kick, Mac,
is your own.
This is CJ Ortiz. I am the Metal Motivator. And seated to the right hand of my dark throne is the fire-breathing professor of ass kickery, the dean who destroys all things douchebaggery. At combat strength training, he is the chief butcher of body brutality. If you are low T, he is toxic masculinity. He's the squadron leader at the Keep the Blaze Alive coaching squad. None other than Patrick Heavy Metal McNamara.
Woo! All right, so when we go to the pub tonight, you enter first, and that's what you need to say before I come in. Yep.
I am a bro-fessional. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the University of Badassery podcast. Super excited. I don't know what episode we're on, and I don't care.
No idea.
Our podcast grows in popularity, even though we put out like 5 episodes a year.
Yep.
So I can't explain that. So it's not because of our effort, apparently. But people seem to enjoy it, Mac, and it's always a pleasure to do that. Why don't you go over our sponsors? Who's bringing this to us today?
We are privileged to have several sponsors, and we're going to consume all these while we're here.
That's right.
Every single one of them. So Killcliff is new on board, right? Yep. So clean energy, CBD. They've been great, and they've been hooking us up with product. And
I'm drinking this Ignite right now, and it's fantastic.
Yep, your head is going to explode, bro. You're going to want to go out in the driveway and work some heavy bag here pretty soon. And then, of course, Taconic Distillery, the maker of my personal favorite bourbon, and I am not blowing smoke up. They're a sponsor because it's my favorite.
Right.
I mean, really, when it comes down to
outstanding,
it.
man.
And then, of course, our buddy Wes Whitlock at Rogue American Apparel, also Invader Coffee. So, this is good stuff. You know, it's roasted in Austin, Texas. Yeah. And this is my own blend, the T-Max Blaze Ops blend. So, yeah, the good stuff.
You know what's interesting about that coffee, Mac, is just recently, we get, of course, the benefit of having some of the stuff sent to us.
Yep, right.
So the sponsor does. But up until this time, and it's been a few years now, I've been drinking Invader. I've drinking just the ground version, and Wes hooked us up with beans, whole beans.
Yep.
So I've been chopping beans, grinding beans now for the past month and a half. And I will say this is, even though it does take more work and effort, just when you thought Invader couldn't taste any better, dude, when you go from the bean right to your cup, it's
no doubt.
Amazing what the difference is, man.
Yep, no doubt. And I appreciate the process. How long is it going to take me to brew a cup of coffee? About 15 minutes. You got to boil the water, got to steep it, got to ground the beans, all that stuff. But damn, man, the end product is freaking smoking bad. The finished product.
Yeah. So I certainly appreciate all our sponsors. Thank you guys, Killcliff, Taconic, and Invader. Please check them out. Follow them all on Instagram. Go to their website. Order some stuff. Our squad's been loving it. Squad's been getting Killcliff. I saw somebody just posted the other day a bunch of their Killcliff. People are. It takes Sherlock Holmes and a team of hound dogs to find Taconic.
Yeah, right.
With a lot of places. So that one's a little tough. But Invader, of course, InvaderCoffee.com. And if you're wondering what the squad is, as I said in the intro, Pat Mack is a squadron leader
of the Pat Mack Keep the Blaze Alive coaching squad on Patreon.
Dude, it's been almost a year,
coming up
since we started that thing.
Yep.
And
several hundred members, and man, we have not only do we have a good time. Not only is there a lot of information being put out by us, but there's a lot of information shared. Within the squad itself, between the squad members, because there is a wealth of freaking knowledge there. The knowledge base within the squad is immense. I thought that I would be the only one putting out information when we first started this, but now I am consuming the information given out by squad members, you know, and the amount of information that's there that we're putting out on the Patreon site. You know, when you go back and look at how many videos we posted, that's a lot of content.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of content.
It's like 130 just how-to instructional videos that have been posted. I don't know how, now everything kind of grew, and like you said, you say so often in the squad itself, we just serve as moderators.
Moderators, right? We're steering the ship, bro,
but the quality of people is amazing. They're taking initiative. Like we'll have a weekly live stream on a Thursday night, and we've got squad members who will actually have their own little Zoom call.
Yeah, right.
Where
After party.
they'll get together before or after and have beers before the live stream. And the live stream is 2 hours every week. So people tell us all the time, "Hey, dude, love the podcast. I wish you guys would do more." We do a 2-hour show every Thursday night.
Yes.
And you get to participate. That's one thing in the squad. We do we have different tiers, tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1. Tier 1, you can be on the live streams with us. You're going to be in the Facebook community. You'll get all the how-to videos, access to all of that. And then you go up from there and we do some other things. We do some business and marketing Zoom calls. Cool stuff. So if you want to learn more about that, patreon.com/coaching squad. Mac, one of our most popular podcast episodes was the one we did on Lewis and Clark.
Yeah, core discovery. And we kind of winged that. It was I think I was telling a story about it on a podcast to you, and I said, you got to read this book on Undaunted Courage. And when you did, you said, holy crap, we got to do a podcast on this. So kind of like the Cliff Notes and give our quirky version of that, because it's a chapter in our history that unfortunately a lot of people don't know about. And why not? I mean, it was pivotal. It was freaking monstrous. It was gigantic. President Jefferson bought from France, Louisiana, which was pretty much the everything from the Mississippi West, for $15 million, and it was uncharted, unmapped, uninhabited. And he was like, "Well, now what do I do with this chunk of land?" And he recruited a buddy of his, Meriwether Lewis, who recruited a buddy of his, Clark, both captains, and man, that was when you look at. Almost impossible feats, because by comparison, that would be like today, how we just had a rover land on Mars. That'd be like asking a couple of dudes who are engineers and build their own rockets. Hey, can you take a rocket to Mars? And they're like, well, but, and then when you get there, map it all out, explore everything. Oh, find a way to breathe while you're there. I don't even know if there is anything comparable today, because it was like a bridge too far, and they ran into all those obstacles. Where they ran into, this is a bridge too far. Like, oh, this is the end of our journey now, and nope, let's persevere, let's drive on. They'd run into strokes of good luck, and then horrible freaking strokes of bad luck. So ebbs and flows. But they ended up being victorious in this. And the amazing thing is, considering the size of that party, 38, 39, whatever, nobody died on that thing. 2 freaking years, 2.5 years, 8. They traveled a total of 8,000 miles. And this is by foot, by boat, by horse. Damn, man.
Diverse terrain.
And they were mapping it while they were going.
Right. It's absolutely unreal. And when it gets to this particular podcast, going back to that episode, I think it better defines what the University of Badassery is, right? Because it's like, we can talk about the same things that everybody else talks about whatever we define as a contemporary badass, but we're looking at badasses from the past, who've really done things where we're sitting here going, how in the hell did they do that? Now, not too long after that, you had said, hey, man.
There's another book you have to read. Talk about badass. You have got to read this book.
Yeah.
Because I think it personifies badassery. And it's very apropos, the title of the boat and the book. Right. It's very apropos because damn. When I went through just the notes again, I'm shaking my head going, how in the hell did they do this, man? How in the hell?
Yeah.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
Because that was 2 years, about 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years, almost 2 years. Yeah. But so we're going to talk, we're jumping into this new subject today, another book, another chapter in history that a lot of people don't know about. Now, there was good reason, for why this didn't get instant notoriety when it happened because there was another event going on
Right.
during this pivotal moment in history. But yeah, so I read the book. CJ not only read the book, but all of the related books.
I got to go deep.
Yeah. Yep. So I've got my cheat sheet right here on some, things I want to cover on this. But but I know I'm going to recollect a bunch because there were so many times I'm going, just slacking a gait, jaw drop. I'm like, what? How? What? Holy freaking Jamoli.
Yeah. It's such a, when Mac first said it, I said, I'd like to do the Shackleton story from the book, The Endurance, which is the name of the ship that they took, Antarctic exploration. And I thought, okay. He goes, it was brutal. And then at a second conversation, Matt goes, I'm kind of wondering if this isn't more severe than Lewis and Clark. And I said, well, I'll let you know. So I've never answered him on that. So I'm going to answer him right now. It is way beyond anything that I've ever heard about historically. I've never heard misery and fortitude and badassery as I have in the story of this, 18-month journey of survival that the Shackleton crew on the Endurance went through. It is absolutely mind-boggling.
Survival, perseverance, endurance, hope, but just being driven, how more or why not all of them just threw in the towel. I don't know why they just didn't throw in the towel, because they were doomed so many times.
Why didn't they die?
Right.
Why didn't they go insane?
Yes, right.
Because others had.
Yes.
There was other trips that were taken where the crews, they just eventually went insane. Now, I think we need context again. Like you just did a great job of providing the context for what how big the Louisiana Purchase really was, and what their trip meant, the trip of Lewis and Clark. In this case, thinking about the early 20th century. So the last frontier, right, is Antarctica.
That's it.
So it was a race to get to the South Pole. And at that time, in their mindset, that would have been equated to going to the moon.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
They had no idea what was going to be involved in something like this.
They had very worthy, knowledgeable, experienced men. For instance, Ernest Shackleton, because he had been on several voyages, to the southern Antarctic region, but never that far.
Right. Yeah.
So he was very experienced seaman, sailor, captain. A lot of experience in the cold climate like that, but oh my God, man.
Yeah, the race to it's kind of an interesting history because everybody wanted to do it first. And so UK, of course, is still in that colonial mindset. So they're very, very assured of themselves. Now, Shackleton, by the time he does the Endurance, he's 40 years old. But before that, he had gone with Scott. And that did not go well because they were bringing like ponies with them. And they didn't do anything for the most part that was right. They never got out there. He went a second time. And again, they almost died on that one. And then he gets up this third project, which is what the one we're talking about today, the actual Endurance boat that they took. But just the fact that they are 3 tries in, and they're still just as enthusiastic. And after we talk about this, what you see is afterwards, after that hellish experience, you figure, I ain't going nowhere near the snow, let alone Antarctica. They go back.
Oh. So one of the reasons it didn't cast a huge footprint on history is because there was another event taking place while they were trying to plan and finance this trip. This little thing happened after Archduke Ferdinand was executed.
Right.
This little thing called World War I. So this thing kicks off, World War I, and in the interim, they're trying to finance this trip. Just that alone, you know, and then getting the boat, you know, brokering the deal to get the boat. You know, I love how in the book it starts out by how the boat was made, and by whom. You know, I jotted down a few of the specs, but it goes into great detail when you read it. It's like, oh my God! So it was built in 1912 in Norway by master shipbuilder Christian Jacobsen. The keel, right, 85 inches thick. The sides on this thing were between 18, so a foot and a half, to 30 inches thick. So the front was thicker than the sides. It was made of oak, Norwegian fir, and greenheart, which is ridiculous hardwood. And a lot of these were single pieces. You know, as many single pieces as possible instead of, you know, joined pieces. But just, I love the description of that. And I wish I had it memorized because that was so interesting to me. You know, I think some of it was articulated and it was made to withstand the pressure of ice. It was, at the time, it was the strongest wooden ship ever built at the time. Yeah. You know, so that description alone, when you read that, it's like, holy crap. I mean, the book doesn't start out like that. The book starts out with with some horrible shit.
Brutality, man.
Yep.
Yeah, I wondered, you know, how do you prepare for something like that? Because what they experienced was beyond anything they had experienced. Much of their misery, they'd made it to the continent before. So he'd walked on Antarctica. He got like within 97 miles of the South Pole. Now that Roald Amundsen, whatever his name was, Roald Amundsen is the one who got there and beat it. So he's the one who got it. So that was discouraging because now you could never say you were, you know, the first to get to the South Pole. So they had to come up with another project, which was go across. So they were going to get another ship, the Aurora, to go around to the other side where they were going to land and then go inland a certain mileage to start leaving depots of food and supplies so that once they got that far and ran out, the rest of the trip would be, you know, okay till they got to the other side of the coast. So that's the vision. Now, again, like you said, dude, that's a hard vision to sell when you are at World War. There wasn't a World War Zero and a World War -.1. This is World War I. This is huge.
World War. Yes, it was big.
So Churchill was even like, I don't give a damn about Antarctica.
I don't give a shit, bro. I got bigger fish to fry right now, homie.
But the Admiralty was like, so here's Shackleton selling this thing, and the guy just says, proceed.
Yep. Go ahead.
Because Shackleton said, no, hey, listen, we understand the sensitive times that we're in. We will stop this trip and go to the front. They were like ready. They were like, forget the triple. He said, no, proceed. So you got to hand it to the vision there to go ahead and let this thing go on. So they're setting sail while their country is at war. Will they even have a country when they get back?
Yeah, they have no idea. You know, the planning process, of course, for all this was a year in the making prior to World War I happening. So the amount of effort already invested, you know, they figure the juice has got to be worth the squeeze because we've already committed all this. We already have the boat, bro. You know, we already have the boat. We have the dudes. And, you know, it's funny. I have to read this, how they got the dudes.
Oh, the ad.
Yeah, the ad. So Shackleton wrote an ad, and it was in the London Tribune, London Times. But the ad reads as follows. Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. And they fill the crew.
Yeah, they were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
With women too.
Right.
Holy crap. How metal is that, dude?
Yeah. Yeah, that's unbelievable. You know, I had another note that when you read a bio of it, you know, when you read like on Wikipedia or something, it says the crew was 28 people. It was really 27. Because they had that stowaway. They had a freaking stowaway.
What was his name?
I forget his name.
Not Barrow. Black Barrow.
Yeah.
Black Barrow.
Yeah, right. So they even had a stowaway, but it was too late to kick him off because they already set.
He's a kid.
Yeah, he's a kid.
I mean, it's like, but what kid, jumps on board that kind of trip?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, wait for the Kiss Cruise.
Right.
Don't get on this damn thing. So Shackleton had some financial woes. Shackleton had a little love triangle problems at home. So he had all the reason in the world to bail. Get the hell out of town. But he chooses to go with him, somebody that he'd been out with already twice before, which is Wild. His right-hand guy, man.
Yep.
Brings him out, and then to Captain. We got to kind of differentiate because Shackleton he's the CEO of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. But the skipper, who was running the ship, so to speak, the directions and navigation and all that, was Worsley.
Yeah, Worsley was bad. Man,
that guy.
Because when we get deeper into this, Worsley, without him,
they're dead.
Dead.
They're dead.
They're dead.
Yeah. Dude.
He was the only one that can, are you the only one with credible navigational skills?
Yeah. Even when it came down to the dead reckoning.
Bro.
Even when it came down to guessing.
Right.
He was dead on.
Yes.
He was like, I had to travel 800 miles and I've got to hit this island that's a speck. And to be off for 10 minutes would be to be off like 60 miles of latitude.
Yeah, I swear to God, I'm getting verklempt right now. I'm starting to get goosebumps just thinking about that.
These guys are unreal. But anyway, so they leave England while their country is at war.
Yep.
And they make their way down.
Tip of South America.
Buenos
Aires.
Buenos Aires, right. Yep. And so they're
Shackleton's behind him right now. He's not even with them yet.
Right.
Yep.
That's
he's
right.
behind him.
That's right. So they got to get to their last port of call, which is going to become more important as the story goes on. But South Georgia, which is basically a Norwegian whaling spot. Mm-hmm. Now that's something to be said because the guy who got to the South Pole first, Amundsen, was a Norwegian.
Yep.
Guy who built the ship, Norwegian, and these whalers who are down here at South Georgia were Norwegians. So, and the thing about it is, this is when Blackborough stowed away on it. Now, one of the things that they learned from the previous expeditions where they failed on Scott's trip and on Shackleton's initial solo trip was they brought ponies.
Yeah, right.
Where the Norwegians brought dogs. And, imagine a bunch of ponies trying to trek through snow and ice of Antarctica. I mean,
post holing the whole way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not going to pull shit,
No.
and then, trying to team them up as compared to dogs and then the maintenance behind them, feeding them. The dogs doubled as companionship too, which was cool,
Yeah, so the ponies just became food.
All right, so wait, did we leave Buenos Aires yet? Did we leave?
We're Buenos Aires. From Buenos Aires, we go to South Georgia.
So now we're So even back up a step. When they were in Buenos Aires, I have to think, just like with Lewis and Clark, I always think logistics. How much shit are you carrying, and how did you forecast?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's nowadays. We've got a Bic lighter, and you're good to go. So I'm even thinking, how many matches? Did you take in, and how were they waterproofed? Because the ability to make light. I mean, they had no fire. They had no fire because there was no wood in Antarctica to burn. But you still had to, heat stuff to melt ice for water.
Right.
So I'm always intrigued by that. What kind of food, what kind of sustenance are you taking? Which we'll talk about some of that food that they had too.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
But I'm always intrigued. So and the book didn't go into great detail with that. Like in the Undaunted Courage, Lewis and Clark, they talked a lot about that, the logistics and how many boxes of glass beads and how many needles, and all that. So anyway, we haul ass from Buenos Aires and we're on South Georgia.
Yeah. So that's where the whalers are. And so the plan is, Shackleton as a leader and a very astute leader, probably one of the most astute leaders I've read about, who's, non-military kind of thing. Well, of course, he was in the military, but for something like this, is he knew that because of what was going on at the time, and that the South Pole had already been reached by the Norwegians, that he needed to think about the money afterwards. And so he brings along Hurley, an Australian photographer and film guy. So he brings a movie camera. So again, this is like what, 1914?
14.
So he brings a guy who can take pictures and film footage of this thing, because he's going to use that on the lecture circuit and all of that to finance this trip. So this is huge for them. So they're going to be checking out new species. They're going to be doing geology stuff, all kinds of. They had everything in mind once they got there. So he brings all of this. They get dogs. They had like 60 something dogs.
Yep.
So they get these crazy dogs, and these dogs were like half wolf.
Yeah, I mean, they're, you know, when you see the pictures of them, they look sort of Siberian Husky.
Right.
You know, that's what they look like, but they were a hodgepodge mix of wolf, hound, husky, you know, just work dogs. They were you know, beasts of burden.
Yeah. So like Max said, you know, they're eventually going to become an important part of the story because they serve several roles for these guys. But so they're going out there now thinking, okay, we've got the film crew, so to speak. We've got navigation and the captain. We've got all hands on deck. We've got a cook, right? We've got, actually it was the boat was sizable enough to be pretty fixed out underneath. They had rooms to do all kinds of to dining and sleep and all that kind of stuff, and of course, you know, room for the dogs.
They only had one carpenter.
One carpenter,
McNish.
He's a son of a gun, boy. That guy is a son of a gun.
Oh shit!
But
I hope we remember to bring.
yeah,
up
we will
later.
for sure. But the Norwegians, watching the weather, because they wanted to get, Shackleton, of course, wants to get on the road.
He's antsy in his pants.
He's antsy. So, you know, down there, spring, summer, winter, fall is a different story than up here where we are.
Just opposite. So, yeah, it's like they're on South Jordan. It's like September, October.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's
approaching summer.
Yeah, it's approaching summer. But the Norwegians said, listen, this is the worst we've seen for ice. Don't do it.
Yep.
And so all of the council
What do those Norwegians know?
of the whalers were like, don't go. Yep. And Shackleton goes. Even Worsley was like, we should listen to the
pros.
Yeah, we listen to the pros at this. And of course, Shackleton doesn't want to do that. He thinks he's got this ultra ship to do this. He's got an incredible crew. He's got vision. It's destiny. And so let's forge ahead. It's not that far. Well, they get into it about a day.
Yeah.
36 hours or something?
They start seeing
the pack
ice.
Yeah. So describe pack ice.
I think they go, though, for they're able to travel about 14 days before everything stops. But they start seeing pack ice right away. So this is layer ice. So it's on, it's not iceberg necessarily, but you got to imagine, let's say an ice shelf. And some of this stuff is 10 foot thick, you know? But now it's all broken up. So you have these massive chunks of ice, surface ice floating on the water. If the boat hit, you know, now this boat was designed to take these things head on, you know, with the front end of it being 30 freaking inches thick and the keel 80 some inches thick. It was designed to smash through this stuff. Plus, they had a steam engine on board as well, the sails.
Now, it was also designed so that if ice got...
It would buckle.
It would, yeah.
It was, like, I think it was reticulated or something like that. They didn't say that, but the way I understood it, because like a lot of modern day body armor is reticulating.
Right.
You know, so kind of like an ectoskeleton of an insect type of shit. Yeah. So, you know, it was designed to buckle and give in certain places. That's the way I understood it.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, they started seeing the pack ice way before they had anticipated.
Yeah.
And this is not good.
Yeah, it's not good because they're wondering, is this the way it's going to be the whole way? If so, no big deal because we can push through that. And then it just gets thicker and thicker. Now they're heading into this area called the Weddell Sea, which is, think of like the Gulf of Mexico kind of thing. It's a huge gulf right there. And the way the I forget what the name for the current that they called it. So it started with a G, but it's like a circuit moving like almost like in hurricane fashion.
Yep.
Just kind of moves in a circle. And so what they don't know is that ice is thicker and thicker and thicker and more packed together. So they're thinking they're just going to go right into that bay, so to speak, right into that gulf, and just get right off their boats and start making their trek. The only thing is, imagine the Gulf of Mexico is all ice, and that's what they're driving into. So it's getting more and more packed as they go in, and they're having to start, push through. But they had a powerful ship, and Worsley was kind of talking about he was having a good time.
Yep.
He was like, I kind of liked the backing up and boom, pushing through shit and creating new leads, which was breaks in the ice that they could kind of push through. So I mean, they knew it was not going to be a cakewalk,
Right.
but they certainly didn't expect what was going to happen, which was
Standstill.
standstill.
Yep. So almost, they're caught in this pack ice, and they keep, all right, fire the engines back on. Let's back it up. Let's ram. Back it up, ram. And they're making zero ground.
Right.
But every day they have high expectations. Yeah. And they might see, hey, 300 meters ahead of us, there's a massive freaking crack. All we need to do is get through this.
Right.
And they start moving like these men on this ice are cutting it with handsaws.
Yeah.
And trying to move it with ropes and with lever bars and all this stuff. No ground. And then that passage that was opened would close up. Boom.
Yeah.
That doorway would shut.
Yeah.
And they did this for weeks.
Yeah. They finally got to that place where they did one time, it was like 48 hours. And then Shackleton at the end said, we're stuck.
Yep.
And so that's when that ice begins to get closer and closer, because you got the pressure from the current is coming from two sides,
Right.
And you've got gales that are blowing through. Now, we're so used to, 15 degrees kind of things. You got to think, okay, a regular day is negative 15 Fahrenheit in this sort of thing. Merciless wind.
Yep.
Absolutely merciless wind. And you have no idea what's going on left, right. And as far as you can see is ice.
Yep. As far as you can see.
So you can't see land. You are still technically in the ocean, and the most violent ocean on the planet.
The Weddell Sea, the most violent ocean on the planet. Yeah. They kind of lucked out as far as sea conditions because once the Endurance became locked in ice, they were still pretty optimistic. We could weather this out and camp here for a few months.
Right. Yeah.
We could camp here for a few months and
we're good.
We'll be able to get her out because the tides are going to change. The weather, the pack ice is going to break up.
Yeah.
And so they were pretty jovial, optimistic. They made the best of it.
They had a party.
Yeah. They still had light too at that point.
Yeah. Because once they knew they were stuck and the boat wasn't going anywhere, they changed the name of the Endurance to the Ritz. And they were having they had haircutting contests.
Yeah, right. They all shaved when they shaved themselves bald. And Shackleton was like, "What in the hell? All right, I'm going to do that too."
Then they would get dressed up in makeup and stuff and put on plays. And then Hurley would take some of his prints and things and do like slideshows and crap. And of course they're eating but every day was work.
Yep.
I mean, they had to clean everything. So they kept everything clean, kept themselves neat and whatever. Again, thinking that, we'll get through this, the seasons will change, and the ice will start to break up again and push away. Nobody thought it would get worse. Nobody thought the pressure would really start to clamp down on that ship.
Nope. Nobody figured it. I mean, they didn't unass all the supplies. They kept it all right there. They had just enough out of the boat, out of the Endurance to live. Their tents, their little stoves and all this stuff. They had just, everything else was in there. Like, now we're good. Just, we'll pull out supplies as we need it. And pretty soon this will all just blow over. We'll get some leverage bars and, maybe we'll hook up the dogs in front of it, pull it out.
Well, so that's the one thing they had to work their dogs every day. So they'd go outside and you can see footage of this. You can see them running around with the dogs, trying to pick them up, falling down with them and just loving on these dogs, man.
So, and it's funny because nobody anticipated that the dogs would have this multi-purpose because now the dogs are making shuttles, right, back and forth to the Endurance for supplies on sleds. And they're also acting as companions for these dudes.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh man, it's so good to have these dogs.
Yeah, they even had 4 puppies.
Yeah, yeah.
Which McNeish,
Right,
the Irishman, was taken. Now, he also had a cat,
He had a cat.
Miss Chippy, which was actually a boy. It wasn't even a
Right. Wasn't even,
Miss Chippy. In fact, there's a picture of Blackborough, the stowaway, holding Miss Chippy on his shoulder
right.
that
I
you
gotta
can
see
see.
that. Yeah.
And they were played soccer outside.
Yep.
You can see footage of that as well. And so they're, again, they're making the best of it.
It's funny you say that too, playing soccer. They understood the necessity to keep physically fit.
Yeah.
So they would jog.
Yeah, they
and stuff
jog.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
They would do those ice baths.
right. Oh my God.
Worsley would jump in there.
Check it out. This is one of the things when I was, I don't know, a couple chapters in, and that's what I was wondering. How are they staying clean?
Yeah.
How are they pooping and peeing? You know, but it talks about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you think about just, going to the bathroom in those conditions, the work that must have been.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but they had all that shit figured out. Figured out.
Well, you got a couple of guys going out at the same time to take a pee in the middle of a blizzard. I start peeing, I'd be like, "Sorry, dude,
Right? Yeah.
you're downwind."
Yes. Sorry about this. But good thing is it's not sticking to you because it's ice before it hits you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what starts to happen is, time's going on. It's dark and dark and dark.
Oh yeah, man.
That starts to have a negative effect there. And, throughout this is where you see the genius of Shackleton. Leadership is more than making decisions, which he did a lot of that. But leadership is this ability to, which was Shackleton's real opponent. His real opponent, as one historian said, was not the ice. His real opponent was the morale of the men.
Yeah. Yep.
So he's like, we can survive the ice. That's a physical thing. But, it's like the Bible says, a wounded spirit who can bear. Once the spirit is destroyed, then it's like there was one group that was trying to make the trek earlier from this expedition, and the guys went crazy because their spirits were broken.
Yep.
So Shackleton knew that, and Shackleton had to keep them, keep their spirits up. So he didn't tell them everything. What he knew, when he saw the handwriting on the wall long before anybody else did. And so you have this meeting in his office inside the ship. There's Wild, there's Worsley, and there's Shackleton. And Worsley can see that Shackleton is not happy. He's upset. And for a while now, they're starting to hear the creaks.
Yep.
That's not the usual sound. It's like the ship is starting to be...
This is whining. This is wood being overburdened by a lot of pressure, and it's starting to whine.
It's starting to make these noises they haven't heard before.
Moan and groan.
So Shackleton knows what's coming. He knows we can't. So he has this little discussion with them because Worsley asks him, "What's the problem?" And he says, "We can't stay here. We can't. It's an untenable position." That's when he says, "What the ice gets, the ice keeps." So he knows, he knows that's it for the Endurance. So he's got to get these guys now off of the ship.
Yep.
And that is a huge transition. That's like the end of Act 1, the beginning of Act 2.
Yep. Right.
They got to get off the ship. And that's a radical change, dude, because these are seamen.
Yeah.
They've only
They're
been
not
on land or
landsmen.
water.
Yep.
They've never been on ice.
Right.
So what do we do?
Yep. He did a bunch of stuff to either dissuade despair or to mask false sense of security, you know?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Damn. But yes, that was a pivotal moment right there.
Now, answer me this. In your military experience, did you see anything like that where morale was something that was easily lost in?
Well, anytime you have those, you have you're hungry, you're cold, you're wet,
Right.
it's dark,
Yeah.
and you're sleep deprived, it comes a lot easier.
Yeah.
Where morale is starting to hit rock bottom. And the longer you sustain that, the easier it is to hit rock bottom with that morale.
Yeah.
So I bet it's funny. By way of comparison, I have done absolutely nothing similar to this, but I've been cold, wet, hungry, tired several times for a duration.
Right.
But it's not years. It's days or weeks.
And it doesn't keep getting worse and worse.
Nope.
The story of the endurance in terms of what they faced was it just when you thought it couldn't get worse.
God.
The whole thing from to the very end.
I mean, I know we're talking on the ocean, but so therefore I'm going to be punny and talk about ebbs and flows.
Right.
Because damn, man.
Dude.
Well, even their flows were just pie in the sky. They were like, "Oh, it's going to get great." they never had they never had luck. No. They forecasted it. They were like, "Oh, this is going to happen. Right. We're going to get lucky here." And then boom, worse. No. And over and over and over and over and over. Over and over. It's like insult to injury, double indemnity every freaking time. Something started to get better, boom, worse.
Yeah, and I'm talking about, when Max says, to be cold, to be wet, to be in the darkness, to be sleep deprived, to be hungry. When it comes to these guys, we're talking about misery down to your eyelids. Yep. We're talking about misery down to your butt.
Dude, your butts. All their butts were shaved because they were cleaning their freaking butts with snow.
Yeah. The misery at every level. And it's you know what? There's simply no way we could describe it to you to get the point. You have to almost read the book to get the full taste of what these guys experience incessantly. I mean, without break.
And then go out in the cold sometime and just endure it for, I don't know, an hour. Yeah. Cold and wet. Just an hour. Yeah. And make sure you have the trifecta of really cold, really wet, really windy. And then think about that for months and months and months and months and months on end. And then you do that in the dark too, that personal experience. Experiment.
Sprinkled in with so many times when you could die.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And there's nobody coming to get you.
And there's nobody coming to get you. Nobody knows where you are.
Right.
Nobody cares. The world's at war, bro. Yeah. They do. The last thing they care about is your dumbass.
They don't give a shit about your dumbass exploration.
The only one who genuinely cared, and I read Worsley's book of the same trek, and he tells a lot of stories about Shackleton, which is great to get that particular perspective. But Shackleton was the one. Shackleton, you'll hear it from Wilde, you'll hear it from the other men, you'll hear it especially from Worsley. His compassion for the men is what we're keeping up their morale, their well-being. How worried he was when he had to get back to find them. We'll talk about it here in a second.
Oh my God, yeah.
He was just so driven, so anxious about these things. So again, they're on this moving ice pack. So they were trying to get across into the bay. So they're stuck in the ice, this huge virtual flat iceberg, we'll just call it that. But it's moving. Mm-hmm. It's moving in a clockwise manner. Mm-hmm. So how the fuck do you get off of this thing?
Right.
And when because they don't. So where's land? So they realize, okay, the trip is over. Mm-hmm. All right. The objective has changed. The initiative is completely different now. We got to survive. Yeah. So they set up camp. Again, this is a moving.
Yeah, it's funny. This is a moving chunk of pack ice.
Yeah.
That is, as I remember, it was about it was 1.5 miles in, what do you call this? Not circumference, because that's around a sphere, but basically, if you circumnavigated it, it was about 1.5 miles around this chunk of pack ice. Yeah. And they were sailing this thing. They were navigating on. They were considering it a boat, a vessel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the wind a couple times was on their side, and they were moving north.
Right.
To safety.
Right. Yeah.
Or northwest or something like that. They had to go northwest. And they would take these readings, in the morning and be like, yes, we went 8 miles last night.
Next day, back 16
back 14.
miles.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. So once again, every time something good would happen, the bad would be twofold.
Yeah. And again, remember, guys, this is, temperatures below zero, incessant wind. Mm-hmm. Getting food was a big deal. So they're still trying to keep the good attitude. They set up camp. I forget what the name of the first camp was. Yep. Second one was Camp Patience, I think.
Yes, Camp Patience. Yeah.
Ocean's Camp, or was it the first one? Ocean's Camp.
Yep.
So they set up there, but then that began to get all messed up, and so they had to keep moving their camp.
Yep.
Around.
And in the interim, make shuttles back to
The ship.
The ship.
Yeah.
Which we haven't talked about that given way yet.
No, the ship is starting to get worse and worse. So so the ice begins to push it up, and then it finally leans over
Toward starboard side.
Yeah. So now it's like, okay, this is uninhabitable. So everybody's off. They're in these camps, and they keep going back and forth. Finally, they just decide we got to get everything out because this thing is going to break up.
Yep. Because they start hearing it, and it's their description of some of the sides cracking were, loud fireworks, gunshots.
Right.
Boom! You could only imagine what that sounded like. With that green heartwood. Some of the hardest wood in the world.
Yeah. Snapping.
Whap! I could only imagine. The moaning and groaning of this thing. The way they explain it.
Yeah. It was real poetry. So they had to rush in and get out as much crap as they could. And
they were doing this subsurface too. They were going into the boat underwater to secure boxes of
Antarctica water.
Yes, Antarctica water, which is pretty cold, by the way.
This water doesn't lukewarm to me, man.
You think about it, so you think, all right, they have to go underwater because they know these boxes of supply are down here, and then get it out. Now they're soaking wet. How the hell you dry that shit out, bro?
Yeah.
How you dry? You ain't sitting by the fire because there's nothing to it burn.
No, you can't, and that's chafing your body the whole time. So they barely get out with those last bit of supplies, and then it becomes a roaming camp. And so they first try because they had these sledges with 3 lifeboats, which Shackleton had named after 3 investors. I remember the one I remember is the Caird. There are a couple other ones that they had, and so they're moving all of this crap, and that's when they start to enter into this other realization of where are we going?
Yeah,
where are we moving to?
Right, where?
Because one day they were camping, and so guys started to wake up the next morning seasick.
Yeah, right.
And they're like, "Why are we seasick?" Because the ice had gotten so thin, you could feel the swell of the ocean.
Yeah.
We got to move.
Yep.
We got to move.
Sense of urgency started kicking right about then.
Yeah.
That realization of, man, if we don't make a plan, even a half-assed plan, pretty soon we're doomed.
We're dead.
Yep.
We're absolutely dead. So food becomes an issue right off the bat. So they're going to live off of, they got penguin, they got seal.
Yep.
So they're going out, killing those, bringing those back. There would be times when they would run out and they would be almost starving for days or weeks, and then they would finally find another flock of this or another herd of that. Yeah.
Today we harvested 60 penguins. They're talking about how the juice wasn't really worth the squeeze on those because they were hard to clean and they didn't yield a lot of food.
Yeah.
And then how the blubber became such a hot commodity. From the seals for just burning,
right?
To make that little candle, or the little stoves they
have.
Yeah,
you seal blubber and penguin skin to burn.
Yep. So that way they could melt water or warm their hoosh.
Their hoosh, dude, the hoosh.
So one of their main forms of sustenance was this thing called hoosh. Just hearing the description of it. So it's basically like a brothy stew with a little bit of pounded meat and fat. And you want to warm this up because if you're given a cup of ration a day, you want that to be warm.
Right.
So they would, make pots of this hoosh over these little burners, this penguin skin and blubber burners. Hoosh.
Yeah, they get these like little portions, like a little biscuit or something.
Yep.
Like one guy said,
powdered milk.
One guy said, yeah, well, when the rations were really, really slim, he said, yeah, you looked at it in the morning, you sucked on it,
right,
for lunch, and then you ate it for dinner. So very, very limited intake, and then it got worse and worse and worse. So when things began to start to look a little dire, they realize, okay, we're carrying too many sentient beings here.
Yes.
Too many stomachs to fill.
Yep.
So Shackleton orders
the dogs be harvested.
So he told Wild to kill the puppies, kill Miss Chippy, who was McNeish, the Irish carpenter's cat, which he took great offense to. And then a few of the dogs, which they didn't eat just yet. They just killed those dogs. And so they kept moving on. Later, they did have to start killing the dogs and eating them.
Yep. And, you know, it's funny because the attitude was, we're very upset, but we totally get this.
Yeah.
Yep. We're very, because they love the dog. They had this bond with him now, this emotional, physical attachment. But they were like, this is horrifying, but if we don't do this, we're dead.
Yeah, like the one guy who, you know, he talks about how his dog survived all the,
Right.
you know, when
all the hard shit.
all, you know, and
he
all,
gets shot in the
and so
head.
yes, he would give out, Shackleton would give out the list of dogs, and his dog Shakespeare would keep surviving, you know, the cut, so
Right.
to speak. And Shakespeare was this brilliant, beautiful, looked like a huge sheepdog, and was the leader of the pack, and until finally it was Shakespeare's time, and so if the guy kind of penned a little poem to Shakespeare, just talking about what a badass dog he was. But I got to hand it to Wilde, dude. That guy, you know, because he's the one who took him out and did all of that hard work. And you'll see Wilde again provide some leadership in Shackleton's place later on in the story. But God, I mean, how hard is that, man?
Yep. Tough calls. But, you know, in survival situations like that, you have to make those tough calls.
They also said, hey, after weeks and weeks of eating seal and penguin, the dog
was
tasted
yummy.
tasted pretty good. So again, it's one thing after another. It just gets worse and worse, and they're realizing we're not getting anywhere. We're not going anywhere. And so at one point, Shackleton wants to keep heading towards land, and we finally see the first sign of mutiny.
Right.
With McNeish, the carpenter.
McNeish, yeah. Yeah, you're not the boss of me on this chunk of ice. You're the boss of me on that boat.
That's right.
That's what he says.
Exactly. And Shackleton, as I think Worsley described, Shackleton was ready to shoot him. He was ready to shoot this guy because he was challenging his authority and mutiny. And so Shackleton goes in, gets his game face on, comes back out, reasserts his position of authority. And his argument is a pretty good one. He says, okay, you will be paid
Yep.
for all of your time and effort here on the ice, which means
I am your boss.
I am still your boss.
I am still
And the
your boss.
expedition is still in play. So it has nothing to do with the ship.
Right.
It has to do with the fact that you are still getting paid to the very end.
There's an important note to bring up for those of you who are saying, well, why didn't they just leave on those lifeboats? They're looking for clear passage.
Yeah.
Right now, there's all these chunks of pack ice around this massive one that they're on. And if one of those lifeboats gets stuck between two chunks of pack
Yeah,
ice,
you're dead.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Because they're not ruggedized.
No.
They're not.
No.
They can't withstand.
They
it.
needed something that
they're-
looked like clear.
Right. So
pack.
that's what they're waiting for right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So they're going to endure the months, eat penguin and seal, keep the morale up, until things seasonally change or the gale come in, the
And
winds
they're
blow them.
constantly taking measurements with the sextant where they are, their location, the weather. I remember one day it hit 40 degrees. And they were all naked and bathing. And they're like, oh, what the hell? The next day it was 14.
They could not get a break. In fact, there was one time when it was getting close to the time when they had to get off the ice altogether, and because the ice split right through the camp.
And Shackleton forecasted it. He had a bad feeling. And he got up.
Yeah,
He talk about intuition, because he got up, he just had a bad feeling or he heard something. And not only did the ice crack, but he watched it happen. And he saw the crack go right through a tent that two dudes were in. He ran over there, and one of these dudes fell in
his sleeping bag.
Shackleton goes down into the ice, pulls him out. Imagine how heavy this guy is. So a couple of them are pulling him up, and as soon as they get him up, that ice closes back up.
Dude.
What a shitty way, because that would take some time to kill you. I mean, if you're trapped under ice.
That's right. That's where it came
Cry
from.
out, I'm trapped under ice. Because you're going to be alive for 30 seconds a minute thinking, all right, maybe this is really bad. This is pitch black. I'm underwater under freaking 4 feet of ice. Because now it's only like 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah.
It's not that 6 to 8 feet anymore.
Well, the thing is, so they get him up, and Shackleton goes, "Are you all right, lad?"
Yeah.
The guy's like, "No, I'm fine, sir, but My tobacco
Yeah, right.
down at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
And he was pissed because tobacco was that was like what would you call it? It was like the one thing they had that was
Yeah, it was sacred. They needed that for morale.
morale. Yeah.
When did we do a pocket dump? Did we already do that? You know, when Shackleton says, "All right,"
Yeah, we had to get
was
rid
it
of stuff.
Was it before they got on the
It was
boats?
before they got. Yeah, it was before they got to the second camp.
Right. But they do this pocket dump where Shackleton says, "Hey, anything that
Yeah.
we just got to lighten the load, bro." And to show how serious he was, he pulls out. It was like a cigarette holder or something. Opened it up, and he had gold bullion in there or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And he dumped it on the ice. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
I'm not going to need this anymore. We got to freaking.
Oh yeah.
we gotta lighten
What
the
he
load.
got with Hurley, the filmmaker, and they destroyed a whole bunch of the footage and stuff that he took. They didn't. He said we have to destroy it, or we'll be tempted to come back and get it.
Oh, right.
So they didn't want that temptation, so he had him destroy it. Precious footage and photographs that Hurley had taken. And so they also had an artist that was there with him, and he was doing a lot of sketches and paintings also along the way as a backup. So, you could go on and on and on about their time on the ice, but they've got to get off the ice. Once that thing split and the guy fell in, miraculous salvation by Shackleton himself, they realize our only way out of here is these three
Got to do it.
lifeboats, man.
Got to do it. Sense of urgency kicked in. So they hit those lifeboats and start nabbing.
Started navigating through icebergs.
Yep. In the darkness.
In the darkness. Yeah, and they would have, and there was whales out there. The one guy said, because the boats were tied together.
Yep.
And those whales would move so close to the boats, and they kept saying all that needed to happen was one whale to go over to hit that.
In the tether. And then
And it would pull the whole thing down. There were so many ways for them to easily perish. Easily. Not like a remote chance.
Nope.
But I mean like
so many ways.
every day. And so they would stop, sometimes. So what they were trying to do is they were getting off this moving pack of ice in the Weddell Sea, and out of the outskirts of the tip of Antarctica that was forming part of the curve, almost like a crescent, was little tiny islands.
Tiny.
So they were first trying to get to this one island, which they felt like had some, because another expedition had been there and had left a bunch of stuff.
Right.
And,
There was some provisions
yeah,
on
so
it.
let's get to there.
It was like a checkpoint or a depot, but
Yeah.
it wasn't it was uninhabited.
Right.
But they knew there were supplies there, and periodically people would come
Right.
and dump supplies and grab supplies.
Yeah. So that was their target, but because of the way the weather and everything, they weren't going to get there.
Yeah, and they
They
overshot,
it. So they selected this very remote little speck out in the middle of the ocean called Elephant Island. And so that's an arduous journey of just them navigating the icebergs, then getting into the deep again of the most violent ocean
In these lifeboats.
in these lifeboats, 3 of them. I mean, we can understand maybe 1 makes it, maybe 2 make it, but all 3?
28 dudes.
All
Lifeboats.
3.
All 3.
And for them, that was such a hellish experience.
And when you're thinking island now, don't think, tropical oasis with palm
not
trees.
Fiji, man.
Think one gigantic conical chunk of rock.
One
sticking
big
up.
cold rock.
Yes, sticking up out of the freaking water with no vegetation on it, nothing but rocks and ice.
Barely ashore.
No shit.
Right?
Yeah, barely. Yeah, barely ashore. But when they found it, they hit this it had just what they called a beach. And they docked there and they were missing a boat.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, damn it, man, we achieved separation, And the next morning that boat showed up. How? I don't freaking know. But they start establishing camp and almost, imagine braving that and making it through the Weddell Sea to land. And they haven't been on land for a long time.
Yeah.
Long time. And then they look at the watermarks on the rocks and they realize they're below the water line
yeah. So
of where the waves come up. And they're like, holy shit.
Can't stay here.
Can't stay here. We have to go to another part of this. We have to find something better.
Right. Back in the boats.
Back in the boats we go. And then the second place they find,
They almost got separated there too.
yeah. And it wasn't, that's right. Because one of them went between rocks and one around. And they were this close to being sucked out to
sea.
to Big Sea,
Yeah.
to Big Blue. That freaking close. But they make it to this beach. Let's call it a beach. It's nothing but rocks, but they had some flat ground. And so they established base camp there.
Now that's when you see the first like physical issue. That's Black Burrow, the stowaway, who he was just frostbitten. Like
He was on the first stages of it, just that when they first got there.
and then
He had club
gangrene and
feet.
crap settling in. Yeah.
Yep.
So he was in. He couldn't even get up because they were so excited for him. So but Shackleton was like, "Get up and like
Right.
charge the beach." He's like, "I can't move."
Yeah.
Skipper, I can't move.
Yeah, most of them, remember how they couldn't move when they landed because they had been huddled in a fetal position for so long that their knees and hips didn't work.
He said Worsley, they had to
Yes, they had to pry them open.
like a jackknife.
Yeah, right. Yep, just pry me open, boys.
It just completely unbelievable. So they get on shore, and they're like, and that was like landing in Fiji for them.
Yep.
Because they knew they were dead in those boats.
Yep.
It was misery like you wouldn't believe to be on those boats. From the waves and the constant threat of death. It wasn't a simple, this wasn't a lake.
No.
This was constant turbulent seas, ice cold water, ice forming all the time on sails and on the edges, and you're bailing water the whole time. It was absolute misery. So they were so glad to be on solid ground, not moving ice, not the turbulent ocean. They are now on solid ground, no threat of the tide coming in and drowning them. And they're like, thank God.
Yeah, and so they're on the windy side of this rock too, and the winds are like whipping at 60, 70
Hurricane
miles.
strength winds.
Yeah.
And blizzards come in for 4 days straight.
Now, initially, they were able to snatch up some penguins.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the supply chain went dry.
Penguins disappeared. And 4 days of harsh hurricane level blizzard for 4 days.
So they made a rock cabin, and they used some of the boats as like roof structures.
Yeah.
For this rock cabin, or one of the boats.
Smoking themselves
These
out.
things were heavy, man. They had to drag these uphill on these rocks, But they had to take good care of these boats because that was salvation.
Yeah.
Because they knew that eventually we're going to have to leave this because nobody's coming to get them.
Nobody's coming to get you.
Nobody knows where Elephant Island is. There wasn't like Coke cans on it and stuff from other people being there and campsites.
Nothing, man.
No.
And so Worsley and Shackleton take a walk.
Yep.
And, right after the blizzard. And so Shackleton says, we can't stay here.
Yep.
And so it's like, well, what are we going to do? He goes, I'm going to get a small crew. We're taking one of these boats, and we're going to go make the trek 800 miles.
100.
To
They're
South Georgia.
going to fashion this thing into a sailboat.
To go to South Georgia, which is where they started, where the Norwegians were, the guys who told them don't do this. Yep. So they're going to go back 800 miles. Now, they just did this. I forget what the mileage was from the pack ice to the Elephant Island. 150 or something
150,
like that? Yeah, 150 miles. So,
and keep the timeline in mind now, too. When the Endurance got stuck, that was January, and they were on that chunk of ice October till October of 15. So now we're somewhere in like November of 15.
oh, my God.
Somewhere like that. Yep. And now we're on Elephant Island. And once again, they take a walk and make that decision. We got to freaking unass.
Yeah.
We got to send a rescue party.
Yeah.
We have got to do this. What are their options?
No. Yeah. 800 miles, again, through the most violent ocean known to man.
In a lifeboat.
In a lifeboat. It's like,
What was cool? That's when McNeish started working again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was able to, I wish they had more detail about that.
Yeah.
Like, how did he get the nails? Did he salvage them from the other lifeboats?
Yeah.
I know that one of the things he did is he took, because they had to build up the sides.
Build up the sides, yeah.
and they had to fill the bottom of this boat they were building with rocks for ballast.
The ballast, yeah. Like 2 tons.
Yeah.
2 tons.
Big freaking gigantic. I mean, these are 100-pound rocks. And he's driving nails into this thing that he probably salvaged from, the other lifeboats. Like, we don't need this nail here and this nail here.
Yeah, they had to make it
Yeah.
because those boats couldn't do anything for them.
So they took Shackleton, Worsley, 2 able seamen, and then who was the last guy?
There was was it McCreen or Crean?
Yeah.
There was 2 Irishmen.
Right.
McCluskey, what was it? I can't remember his name. McCarthy.
Yeah, right.
McCarthy. And then the bulky, stocky guy who was like a wrestler and got chewed out and demoted back on the Endurance early on because he was bullying other guys.
Yeah, right. Oh,
remember that?
They took him.
Yeah, they took him.
Well, because they didn't want him causing trouble in the camp.
And they didn't want McNeish causing trouble either.
Yep.
So McNeish goes with them. So
Dude,
they got
that was heavy. That was decision making right there.
that was huge. So they also built up the top. And using everything from wood planks to even parts of tent and canvas to cover it all up so that they could, have a deck of sorts. Not a deck you could walk on, but just something to shield them. And then they would have they took a stove, enough supplies for, a month?
Yep.
I think. A month worth, because they figured after that, we're dead anyway.
Yep.
So 800 miles that they've got to go. Who on that damn island thought they were ever going to make it? They went through for 150 miles?
They had no other choice but to be optimistic. They had no other
there was
option.
no other choice.
And it was as soon as they left, that's when they had to, the stowaway, that's when they had to amputate his toes.
Yeah.
And he was like, just get it over with,
They gave him some whiskey and whatever, and it was no problem, man. Now, when they finally took off, and there's pictures of the guys waving, and they waved to them till they could finally get out of sight. They sat there and waved and waved. Now, when they first got on the boats and went out, like 2 or 3 of the guys fell into the water, and got soaked with their clothes, and so they stopped, and those guys went back on shore, and guys who were staying behind changed clothes with them.
Yeah.
And it took 4 days for the wet clothes that they put on to dry out.
Yep.
4 days. Unbelievable.
Yep.
So they're making this way. Again, like on the pack ice, you could go for 3 days just talking about the ocean trip.
Yeah.
How they made it 800 miles.
Well, and they endured like massive
This is
waves.
when it was the worst.
Yep.
This is when it was the worst.
Yep.
It was the absolute worst of all that they'd experienced, but you'll see it gets even worse.
So they'd run into these moments of reprieve where, all right, let's take shifts, let's get some sleep. So in order to sleep, you had to go down and crawl into these fur sleeping bags. Reindeer sleeping bags that are on these rocks. So you imagine that's got to be real comfortable.
Right.
And they're soaking wet because the waves are constantly coming over this thing. So not only was their job to sleep, but their duty was also to bail, and they had to pump.
Yeah.
They had a hand pump. Well, the hand pump broke, and they had to fix that. And I remember there was one like chunk where they had some pretty good weather, but when they woke up in the morning, their boat
was sinking.
Yeah, because it was covered with freaking ice. And now they had to chip all this stuff off, and they're slipping around on it.
Yeah.
They're on the top of this makeshift floor, chipping off with hammers these massive freaking chunks.
You could only do some of the stuff that they were doing, the pumping and even the chipping the ice, they could only do for 5 minutes.
Yep.
Before their hands started to completely freeze, and then someone else had to come in and take over. There's the other thing is what we haven't discussed throughout this whole journey is fresh water.
Yeah, right.
You don't have fresh water.
Damn, man. They brought, I don't know, several gallons, whatever, a couple barrels of fresh water. They opened up one of them and realized that it had been tainted.
Yeah, with salt water.
Salt water got into it.
They couldn't drink
So
it.
now they're down to one of these. So they had 2 barrels. I don't know how big they were. Let's call them 25 gallons. I don't know. but one of them is no good.
No. And so you could, so well, why not just suck on the ice? You couldn't.
You could.
It was too cold.
Yeah.
It's too cold. So it would be like chewing on putting a hot iron in your mouth. It would literally sear your flesh. That's how cold. So you couldn't, they said, one guy said, what you had to do sometimes is take little chips of ice into a tobacco tin,
And stick it in your clothes.
stick it in your clothes or your sleeping bag at night, and it would give you a teaspoon of water to have with your breakfast in the morning on the boat. So now this is where the genius of Worsley comes in.
And he was, talk about threading the needle, because the sun would only be exposed for seconds, between clouds.
Now explain how the sextant
Position of the sun, equator, all that stuff.
position of the sun to the horizon. Now, how do you get that when the skies are cloudy
Right.
and there is huge waves? How do you get a bead on the horizon and you have to stay still yourself? So he's got guys holding him, and they're like, "For how long do we have to?" And he goes, "Until we get
Right. And he's plotting this on a map
Yeah,
that he needs to keep dry. He's plotting this shit
writing down his
on
coordinates.
a map.
Yeah.
And he would double and triple check.
Yeah,
And well, the reason he was triple checking a lot of times is because it was despair once again.
Yeah.
It's like there's no way we could be here.
no way
we should be here.
Yeah.
We should have traveled 80 miles, not 40 miles backwards.
My God, man. Yeah, it was just, but even in that situation, Shackleton was still playing the same role of not telling the guys everything. He still kept their spirits up. There was the one guy, what was his name? Was it McCreen or McLeish?
It's something like that. Yeah.
But he was the optim. I mean, he was an optimist till.
Oh, yeah.
He was extreme.
Yeah.
He was like, "Dude, best day ever.
Best day ever.
I wanna
This is
meet
great.
that
This is an adventure.
guy." He was having a great time.
False motivation.
Oh my God. And so anyway, they finally, how they did this, because any mistake would have resulted in 60 miles
Yep.
change in latitude.
And if they hit the north side of South Georgia, they would have been sucked out to sea.
Yeah.
They would have been sucked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they were threading the needle, threading the needle. The whole freak. Oh my God, man. When they finally, saw land, hopes went high again. And then what? Too rough. Can't make
Too
land.
rough, can't make land.
So now we have to stay in the water inside of the island for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of weaving.
And hopefully not losing ground or getting sucked out to the north side of the island.
Right. Yeah.
Damn, bro.
Yeah. So just to finally see land was so huge. 800 miles, guys. 800 miles. That's what, 7 times what they had done just to get from the pack ice to Elephant Island. So anyway, but behind them is what, 23 men, all under the charge of Wild. So Wild, think about in the story, we won't go into their deal, but it tells about their everyday ordeal, staying alive and staying hopeful, because you got to be thinking, these guys are they even going to make it? Because it's 90 days pass, 100 days pass.
Well, they were planning on a month.
Yeah.
So that's when they started putting posts and lookouts.
Yeah.
On a peak. And they did that for 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, thinking
Do it up there every
what
day.
the hell's going to happen, and when do you lose? So, but what did you say earlier? Because I wanted to make a point about that.
No idea.
About the positive, looking on the bright side. The what you call it, forced motivation or
False motivation.
false motivation? When you said they had to be.
Right. They had to be optimistic.
They had to be optimistic. And dude, what do the average life of the average person listening to this podcast is never anything remotely close to that. And yet we struggle.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? To find a reason.
Right. Yeah.
Find a
Our
reason.
internet's down. Oh my God. I have no running water for a day.
But think about it. I mean, because this is the truth. Because if you don't stay optimistic till the very end, the natural mental default will be insanity.
Yep. Despair first and then insanity.
And insanity because your mind has nowhere to go yet, because there's no death to take it out of its vicious cycle, and it eventually reverts to or devolves into insanity. So you have to be optimistic. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let that be your footnote here.
Yep.
You have to be optimistic. I don't care what the hell you're going through. So they get to finally land at South Georgia. Now, South Georgia, this is where they started.
This is where they started.
But they landed on the other side of the island.
But the thing is, too, they couldn't risk going on the north side of the island.
Yeah.
Because sucked out
It
to
was
sea.
sucked out to sea.
So, it was a crapshoot. It's like, man, this is our one chance. The weather is being, good to us right now. Let's hit this freaking chunk of land. Otherwise, dead.
Yeah.
So let's hit it. And then they land on the exact opposite side where the whaling community is.
Yeah.
So now what?
Yeah.
Now what do we do, boss?
Yeah. So it's like, great, we're off the ocean again. That's something to be excited about. But who cares?
Yep.
Because we are now in and they had a map
Yep.
of South Georgia, but the whole interior was uncharted.
Uncharted.
So they had no idea what was in there.
Nobody's crossed that. Nobody's stepped foot on that interior of South Georgia.
So the thought is, can we go around the island to get to the other side of the whaling community? No, we can't risk it. You're gonna die. And so Shackleton says, we're gonna walk it. Now, so by the time they get off these boats after 800 miles, exhaustion is, I don't even know how you say it. They're so depleted in every way, shape, and form.
They've been eating quarter rations of half rations of hoosh a day,
Barely any water.
Right, barely any water.
No sleep.
Yep.
And they get off and they can't sit idle because Shackleton is haunted by the thought of the 23 men that are still on Elephant Island. So he can't take a month to restore himself. So he decides we got no choice. We've got to cross this island.
They planned it well, though, because they took a couple days to reconk, get strong, hydrate, and eat.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they just set off right then.
No. Yeah,
And then the amount, what did they have for supplies? They had like a length of rope, maybe an axe hammer, pickaxe, something like that. They had very little stuff, and their clothing was shit.
Yeah.
Because they've been wearing it for a year, more than a year at this point. Oh, hey, back up a point. So one of the despair again.
Yeah.
So when they were on this voyage, this 800-mile voyage, this was horrible. Their only rest was getting those 30 minutes, hour, 2 hours of sleep in these reindeer fur sleeping bags.
I know what you're going to say.
And one of them goes down to take a nap on the rock ballast, and he opens up the sleeping bag, and it's filled with slime. So these sleeping bags are rotting. Yeah. They are rotting. So they threw two of them overboard. They're rotting. They're filled with slime.
All right. And then how much the reindeer hair got over in
it was everything. It was in the
water,
water, in their food. Yep.
All of their bodies. It was the most irritating thing. And the thing about that got me about that 800-mile trek was how relentless the ocean, the water, constantly wet for 800 miles.
800 miles.
With freezing water.
So you imagine how much comfort, because your body core temperature must have gone up some in those reindeer sleeping bags. Now we have to ditch two of them.
Yeah.
We got to ditch two of them. This is the only time that we could bring core temperature back up, and feel our feet again.
Yeah, they said they knew every rock.
Yep.
In the ballast.
Yep.
They knew every rock. They knew every edge, they named some of them.
Yep.
They hated them so much. So anyway, they
get strong.
Take a couple of days, and McNeish, the carpenter again, takes screws and screws them into the shoes that they had to give them some grip, some kung fu grip going up. God knows what they were going into. But Shackleton was prepared to go for 36 hours.
Yep.
Beyond that, you're dead.
Meanwhile, back on Elephant Island, the 23 men that are there who are starving, dehydrated, and freezing also run out of tobacco. So they find it a keen idea, because one of them had a degree in good ideas, to peel little pieces of felt out of their shoes and stick that in their pipes and smoke it.
They wanted to smoke so bad. They were bartering. They were. Then there was those one guys who saved theirs to the very last end. And the one guy was the geologist. And they would always eventually convince him to trade some of his tobacco for some freak. So they would all go out and find rocks that he didn't have, and come back and say, "I'll give you this rock if you give me some tobacco." And he would always fall for it.
Yep. This one's got bits of purple in it.
He would sell his tobacco, man.
So so they set off, uncharted, South Georgia Island, and they track this thing. And once again, it's despair. It's like, it reminded me of Lewis and Clark, where they get to a peak.
Yeah.
And they see another peak out in front of them. They get to that peak, another peak out in front of them.
Yeah.
And they move continuously.
Yeah.
They don't stop.
No.
They let's power through it, take these breaks periodically, but we're not camping and sleeping.
Right.
Because we've got nothing. We've got no supplies.
Right.
If we stop and break, we are going to die.
Yeah.
It was just that. So there was one part in it. They get to a peak and they're on pretty much a ledge. And it's like 1,000 feet of slope below them. 1,000 feet.
Dark.
And it's pitch black. And they know it's funny because hard decisions like that become easy when it's either life or death.
Yeah.
So, me making that decision right now, no freaking way, bro. There's no way we're doing this. But to them, it's like, we've cheated death several dozen times. So what the hell? So that was Shackleton who said, hey, I got an idea. Let's just make a human toboggan. We're just going to sit, nut to butt. All five of us and
roll up the ropes,
and tie, and we're going to slide. And there wasn't a lot of pushback from that. They were like, okay, it's only 1,000 feet.
1,000 feet into fog and darkness, and you don't know what rocks or what you're going to suddenly smash into. You have no idea what's below you.
So they just make the decision, say, what the hell. They tether together.
It was like the Christmas Vacation scene where he greases up his sled.
Greases up his sled, because that's how they went.
Yeah.
They went from 0 to 100, just like that. Boom. And they were, what they were doing? They were having fun.
Smiling, yeah.
They were cracking up.
Worsley said he was giggling.
They were giggling all the way down. And they hit the bottom and they just kind of plateau out. They plateau out and they stand up and they're looking at each other and they're, like
it was freaking Aspen, Colorado, man. Like the bunny trail or something.
And they were just going, "Mother, we did that shit," high-fiving and shit. Damn.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't too long after that where it got really critical again because they're exhausted, and Shackleton just says, "All right, we need to rest a bit."
This is in the morning now, right? There's light coming up.
Yeah, so they stop, and so Shackleton says, "Let's rest a bit," and then he notices that the other two fell asleep. So Shackleton's like, it's so tempting to fall asleep right now, but that's how you die. So he waits about 5 minutes, and then he wakes them up.
Yep.
And he says, "You guys have been asleep for 30 minutes. Let's keep going." He lied to him.
Yep. But the moment of
they get to that other peak where they look down.
Yep. I was thinking about what Shackleton heard.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it was right after that break.
Yeah.
It was right after that break, and Shackleton hears something. And he's like, and he tells the other guys, he goes, "Hey, I heard something. And if we hear the same thing in 5 minutes."
At 7 o'clock?
That's 7 o'clock in the morning. Because the steam whistle blows in the whaling community to wake everybody up.
Right.
At 6:55, and it rings again
at 7.
At 7 to tell them to come on into work or whatever. So he hears that, and I think he takes Worsley to another rise so they could get a better vantage point on the hearing. 5 minutes later, they hear it. It's like, motherfucker, bro. This is it. So now they don't have, but they have to navigate a waterfall, and they're soaking freaking wet. But yeah, man, that was good news for them.
Yeah, that was huge. That was the first. That was the okay. We're at least 3 of us are going to make it.
Yep.
And pretty sure we'll be able to get the guys on the other side of the island.
Right.
Of course, we got to get back to Elephant Island and get the other 23. Again, this whole time, Shackleton is just driven by this anxiousness to get back.
So what they're they're tracking to this whaling community, and there's just some dude, out there doing his thing, and he sees these figures coming toward him that have these massive beards.
Yeah, out of an area that nobody comes from.
Nobody. And they're just in these tethered, raggedy ass furs.
Yeah. Hair as long as mine is.
Yep. And Shackleton could barely talk, and he asks him,
Face is black.
Black faces from all the burning whale blubber.
Yeah.
Or the seal blubber. Yep, black.
Emaciated.
Yep. And he asks him about
Where's McCurley or whatever?
Yeah. Yep. And he goes, he's over here. I'll bring you to his quarters. And when Shackleton knocks on his door and the guy answers, and he goes, I am Ernest Shackleton. The guy takes a step back in his house, and then he approaches him and just embraces him. He's like, because there was word, news or something, that these guys were doomed. They were missing. They were doomed. So, yeah, big celebration. And, it's funny because when they met the Norwegians again, the Norwegians like, you guys are freaking gods. You navigated the Weddell Sea in a lifeboat with a makeshift sail. Big celebration. They get him cleaned up and fed. Yeah. And then once again, bad news.
Bad news. Yeah. Can't
save the men.
Now they got the guys from the other side of the island. They got voyage home. They were sent home. So they're out of the picture. They're good. They're golden. They're sent home. It took what? How long to? It was 4 tries.
Another 2 months. So
they couldn't get a ship.
Right. So we were from Elephant Island to where they are now, we're at a month-ish, about a month. And that's when the guys on Elephant Island start posting lookouts. Mm-hmm. So now, as the days trickle by, that despair is starting to set in, more and more, because they were expecting 1 month rescue. Not more, not less, 1 month. And then it goes on to 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks. But they finally get a boat
from the what's it? The Chile,
Portuguese?
No, the Chilean. The Chilean.
Yecho
or Yeko or something like that.
Yep.
Because they wrote home all the way to the UK. They wanted him to send a boat from the UK.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So can you know how, again, we've said several times, Shackleton was driven by his anxious. Can you imagine the anxiety for him?
No.
Now that the guys on the other side of the island are good.
Right.
They're good.
Yep.
He knows they're sitting there waiting.
Yep. They're sitting there waiting. Yep. And he has probably the worst thoughts in his mind of them slowly perishing, eating one another, going mad, just driven insane. When they finally, that feeling of joy when the guy spots the boat.
Yeah.
He's like, holy, and he runs. And all these guys are running now out of this rock.
Well, he comes in. He comes into the tent where they're all just kind of hanging out, and he goes, "Sir, should we put up some smoke signals?" Why? Because there's a ship.
There's a ship. Yeah.
He said, "Guys,
they started sprinting.
They were like, half naked. They didn't care. Nope. Barefoot.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They ran out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there it was.
And
there's a picture of it too. Mm-hmm. Hurley, because Hurley was still there with his camera.
Yep.
So he got a picture of Shackleton's boat coming to get them.
Yeah, you guys have to, just Google that and look at some of the pictures, because a lot of those photographs survived, and they're crystal clear. They're really good. Black and white photos, probably
video footage.
Yeah, probably large format camera or something. Video footage. It's funny because when the Elephant Island survivors are climbing onto this boat, they didn't recognize Worsley, and they didn't recognize it
because they were all cleaned up.
They were all cleaned up, haircuts. They were like, "Who are you again?"
So Shackleton, this moment for him must have been the closest thing to heaven.
Yep.
Because he sees them, he sees the mass, but he doesn't know how many people are there. So he grabs Worsley's binoculars and he's looking at, and he's trying to count.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's counting. He's getting a head count.
And then he finally just, Skipper, they're all there.
Right.
They're all there. Mm-hmm. All of them. Can you imagine? Nope. Dude, not one person died.
How?
Well, here's this. When they were back on the crossing the island, South Georgia.
Yep.
During that trek, 3-man trek, that both Worsley and Shackleton had the same sensation, that there was a fourth person with them. Remember that?
Yeah.
Because Shackleton said, I had this feeling as we were traveling that there was another person with us. And then he said, then Worsley tells me, he said, boss, I had this strange sensation that there was another person with us.
Yeah. Damn.
That's like Daniel in the lion's den kind of shit right there, man. So what a huge relief.
So crossing South Georgia Island, right? We're at 1915 now, or whatever. They did that with a pickaxe and a small chunk of rope. In the 1950s, an experienced climbing team decided to mirror that trip, and they barely made it with all their equipment.
Wow.
Yeah, with like 1950s state-of-the-art equipment with crampons and ice axes and long ropes and all that. They barely made it.
Because Shackleton said, he said, when we were making that trek, even though it took those 2 days to restore themselves, their muscles were not developed for hiking and walking. So, every conceivable thing, that every point of misery, and again, you have to read the book to get the account of the misery about how it affected every single bit of your body. There was arduous, brutal discomfort at every point of your body, internally and externally. Not, like I said, even down to the eyelids, everything was affected by salt water, by freezing temperatures, and the anxiety and the despair, all of this stuff the whole time, and it's relentless and it never ever stops. That's why I said absolutely this was worse than Lewis and Clark. And I think the ultimate tale of badassery. So they go back to there was great fanfare, even by the Germans,
right?
Even though they were at war with Germany, even the Germans were like, "Holy hell!" And they celebrated the return of Shackleton's crew. One guy, actually, before he started, he had written to his dad. That initial time they were on South Georgia before they started the whole journey, they were there for like a couple months or so, still getting stuff together before they left. He writes his dad and says, "Everything's going great. We're about to head on this journey. I think we're going to do great. I'll be back in 15 months or whatever." He goes, "And as soon as I get back, I'm going straight to the front." He says, "What glorious days we live in." Dude.
Different generation, bro.
Different generation. So like some of those guys, one guy who got back and he went straight to the front. And another guy died like 3 months later, whatever, on a ship. McNeish went to, I think, New Zealand.
Once you taste that sense of adventure, though, for that long, you're going to crave it. It's like Coulter during the Core Discovery. After a couple years of going across the continental U.S. and coming back, when he saw the cows, he said, "Holy crap! Out. I can't go back to civilization."
I'm out. Daniel Boone, man, and just right back upriver. Yeah, they quickly organized another trip to go back. Same guys, Worsley, Wild, Shackleton. You just came out of hell. You're going back?
Yeah,
what are you doing? And they do.
I can't get any worse. Come on.
So we learned, right? So they go back and they're back at South Georgia to restart this thing again. And Shackleton had written a letter to his wife, and he said, "I feel like I'm no good for anything other than adventure, other than being out here with, in these kind of circumstances." So he told his wife, "I'm not cut out to be 9 to 5. I'm not cut out to be a husband and a father. I'm cut out to do this." So he goes again to make this again and dies of a heart attack.
Tragic.
Buried right there. On the request of his wife to be buried in South Georgia. So we're going to make an expedition to South Georgia to go visit the grave of Shackleton. But yeah, that's the story, man, of this tremendous Antarctic expedition.
I would even recommend to people the Audible book. Because the guy who narrates it does all the accents. He does the Australian, the Scottish, the Irish guys, so it's pretty good. Because I read it the first time and then listened to the Audible the next time. And it was nice.
Yeah, if we continue doing here on the podcast, I'd love to cover other stories like Valley Forge and it doesn't have to be
Stories of badassery,
yeah,
bro.
and there's some that are somewhat contemporary. But I think that makes for a much better discussion for this particular.
Yep.
Because Mac and I will go deep in these stories, and so it's just kind of us, as you said, regurgitating
Right. Our version.
our version.
It's like drunk history without the drinking.
Drunk history without the drinking. But dude, thank you so much for recommending not just the Lewis and Clark, but then this story.
Yep.
Just tremendous. So, I mean, it's going to speak to us differently because even though you would never put yourself in the same shoes as this, you have been in deprivation, you have been in dangerous places, you have dealt in all things that the normal person would never, ever encounter. These things speak to you,
Yes,
don't they?
very much. And I'm like these guys, I have to have that sense of adventure.
Yeah.
I have to keep going back to the Rocky Mountains and getting out into the woods and making myself a little cold, a little tired, a little hungry, and a little scared.
That's right. Well, that's the thing, guys, is we're in a time when luxury is now your enemy. Because it gives you you have now the luxury to complain and to have a sense of entitlement and expectations. And so you're not familiar. I'm not familiar with this level of hardship. So if you want to be good to yourself, give yourself some hardship.
Yep.
And, Mac, his life has dramatically changed in 2020 because of COVID shut down a lot of the traveling, which is something welcomed. And his life is, like I said, been transformed. But now, still to this day, still being as creative as you can, right?
Absolutely.
To never give yourself any rest.
Right.
In that sense. I mean, we sleep and do all that kind of stuff. But I mean, you
Always
need
busy.
goals. Yeah, you need goals. We need activity. We need productivity. And there's a lot to be learned here from this impressive story of just being at death's door in the most harsh conditions imaginable, with not the modern accoutrements that we have today, but with the barest of things and this will to survive. Once that initiative changed, then this became, up to that time, was the single greatest maritime boat ride in history.
Maritime adventure.
Not Columbus, not Nina Pinta and Santa Maria.
Nope.
It was this, that 800-mile trek. But what a tremendous story. So thanks for that, dude.
You are welcome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, remember, if you want to you want to go deep with Pat Mack and enjoy not just instructional videos, but also weekly live streams. We get to do this kind of stuff and talk back and forth and Zoom calls and all that wonderful crap. I want you to join us on the
Pat Mack, Keep the Blaze Alive Coaching Squad on Patreon.
Patreon.com/coaching squad. And I'm talked out, bro.
Same. I'm tired. I got to pee.
We got to be.
I got to melt some ice, get something to drink.
Anyway, that's it. Follow Mac at TMax Inc. on Instagram. You can follow me at Metal Motivator. You can follow University of Badassery at University of Badassery. All the links you'll get to every conceivable thing is all from those respective channels. And remember, in whatever you do, Mac,
Don't suck.
metal up.